And welcome back to the channel, Blown for Good, Scientology Exposed. I'm your host for today, Claire Headley, and I am joined by my wonderful guest, Joy Vila. Thanks for being here,
Hey,
Joy.
it's good to be here, Claire. It's so nice to meet you in person.
So nice to meet you too. Hopefully one day it will be really in person, but in the meantime, most things are virtual these days. So it's just a pleasure to have you on. And I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today, as I told you.
Me too. This is exciting. It's going to be
Yes.
always good to get a chance to share the story with someone who's lived it, even in such an incredible way and survived it. So, I'm speaking to someone who understands, which it's always nice to have that understanding.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I think knowing there's a community of support is incredibly important for
hmm
anyone, but especially when you're getting out of a high control coercive organization like Scientology. So,
Yep.
again, thank you for being here. I'm so glad you're out.
Me too. Thank you, Jesus. I am out. I never thought I would leave Scientology. I never
Yes,
thought it would be a place that I would want to leave until it was.
yes. Yeah, well, I figured if you're good with it, I would love to hear how you got in. I think part of what makes your story unique, at least from my perspective, is that you grew up Christian, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. And so obviously, most people know Scientology presents as accepting people of all religions. And I'd love to really dig into that with you from your perspective.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was so I grew up Christian. My dad was a minister and a non-denominational Christian minister. My mom, a gospel singer, lots of art, lots of trauma in our family. My mom was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. And for people who don't know, that is, at least it was back then, the highest on the list until you become somebody who hurts others or hurts themselves.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and she was in and out of mental hospitals, institutions. I spent my 8th birthday in a foster home
Mm.
because my mom had kidnapped me and my little sister at the time because she heard voices and it would tell her that my dad is the enemy, so she'd take off, and my dad had to call the police on her because it was
Wow.
kidnapping. So, quite traumatic at 8, and then she'd come back home and we just pretend like it didn't happen, so it's real
Wow.
extreme. Yeah, and
Mm.
we I thank God that I had Jesus in my life during these moments because I did have a church, I did have ministry around me, I did have understanding that there's a community there and that this isn't my mom, this is something that's happening to her that she's struggling with, and she would say that, so she was lucid when she was lucid. Um, she unfortunately died at the young age of 50,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
thank you. And it really set me off the deep end when I lost my mom because I thought I was going to help her more. I put it on my heart. I said, I'm going to help her. I'm going to be a famous actress and singer. I'm going to make a living and buy a big house and move my family. And, I had these big dreams. And backtracking a little bit, when I was 3, I got sexually abused by a family friend, and it continued until I was 5.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
there was a lot of setup for trauma, and Claire, I just knew I wanted to be an artist more than anything. I wanted to make it, and I wanted to get out there and move to Hollywood because I grew up in Santa Barbara. I was born in Orange County and then Santa Barbara, California. So Southern California, just a few hours from LA.
Yeah.
And we moved to Burbank, which is 20 minutes, 15 minutes over, to Hollywood. So, and that's when things started to get a little bit crazier for me. When I lost my mom, I kind of felt like, well, what's the point?
Mm.
I got into like the sex, drugs, rock and roll, Hollywood, 2009, 2010. It was this big like Marilyn Manson, every goth stuff. And I got into a lot of that. And it's a self expression. I love the creative expression. I would be singing, I'd be dancing. I got with an acting agency that started trafficking me to sleep with people for money for
Oh,
movie
my
roles.
gosh.
So it was just like hit after hit, and I thank God that I always had this smile on my face because I wouldn't talk about these things, and through that, I mean, I also had an abusive relationship, so I said, "Okay, I'm gonna make this no matter what. I'm gonna get out of this life that I'm in, this struggle, because I know I'm meant for greater things. I know I'm meant to create and push through." And so Scientology found me at that point where I didn't have any sort of counseling. I had moved away from my Christian faith. I still would say I'm a Christian, but I wasn't going to church. I wasn't being ministered to. I wasn't seeking God daily. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do to fulfill myself spiritually. So when this spiritual technology presented itself to help me with practical tools, which I thought, man, I've had so much of this happen, and this personality test is showing me that the traumas are not like I can get rid of them. They're not permanent.
Yeah.
And this was at Celebrity Center International. And I actually came into the Celebrity Center because I had booked a modeling gig. So I was modeling, singing, dancing, trying to booking all these things. And I'd gotten away from the agency that had trafficked me. Thank God I was only with them for a year. And now I was just like beat up, tore up from the floor up. Like, what is going on? Is this what Hollywood is?
Hmm.
I'm 22 years old and I'm already like,
Wow.
over it. And Scientology looks so good. It's so clean. And the Celebrity Center Castle, which was just, I mean, celebrities. I'm like, this is what I came to LA for. This is how I want to be treated. And they loved me. They
I
loved
see.
me. They said, "Oh, we love it. We need Scientologists like you. You're Black, you're Latina, you're an
Mhm.
artist. You've got it. You got what it takes." They told me every single thing I wanted to hear. I did
Right.
acting classes there, and clear body, clear mind seminars. I was like, "Oh, I'm into health. I'm into nutrition. This is so wow. These people are smiling. They look clean. They look happy." um, I was really deceived hook, line, and sinker in the beginning because why would I doubt this? I trusted them. I told them my whole life story, and I was looking for someone to be my family. I'd lost so much at that point,
Right.
and they presented such a great promise of freedom and artistic integrity, and we're going to get you booked on shows. They told me straight up, the SEERG member, he told me straight up, I'm going to be your new family, consider
Mm.
me Uncle Eric.
Oh my gosh.
And
And so let me ask you, had you heard of Scientology before this? Like, did you have any trepidations going in, or what did that look like for you?
so this is why I speak so much about it, and I need for people of all different beliefs and backgrounds, but especially Christians, because Christians, when I was raised as a Christian, I was like, oh, Scientology, that's just another whatever. It's a cult, but like all other beliefs are cults. Like, it's like Muslim or whatever. Like, okay, I respect them, but it's not for me.
Mm.
Don't think that it is what it is. So I had zero education on what it is. I never seen the South Park episodes. This is 17 years ago now, because I
Right.
was in for 15 years. We didn't have the internet like we do now. I mean, you could Google things, but it was like a bunch of kind of Reddit pages. Because I remember I Googled it when I came in, and there was a few ex-Scientologists, but it wasn't YouTube was I don't even know if YouTube was a thing yet, or if it was a
Mhm.
bunch of memes and, random stuff. It wasn't an organized online expose of Scientology. So I was completely sheltered from that. And I really was hurting. So when they told me all the good things, they did say, "Well, have you heard?" They tried to pull the black PR, as you're trained to do. Okay, what have you heard about Scientology? The
Right.
only bad thing I had heard about it, Claire, was that it was a religion started on a bet that L. Ron Hubbard had, apparently with C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, and they said, "Who can make a religion?" Now, I don't even know if that's true. Did that actually happen? That's what I heard. And
I
so
haven't
he said,
heard that one before.
"You never heard that?" Yeah.
I have heard Hubbard said, if you want to make $1 million, start a religion.
Mhm.
That one is more well known. I'll have to, I'll take a look and let you know if I find anything.
Yeah.
I
Well,
always
he's a
recommend,
science
I don't,
fiction writer, and had he made that bet with other fantasy fiction writers.
yeah,
So that was
interesting.
negative, obviously, and I thought, "Okay," and I did hear that, I heard that quote that you said now, I've heard that later, that if you wanna you wanna make $1 million, start a religion, right?
Right. Another thing Hubbard said is that religion was an implant on the whole track. Of course, that's referring to programming in our millions of years of lives, allegedly.
Yeah.
that was
Trillions.
designed to
Claire,
control
trillions.
people. Yeah, right. Whatever.
They just keep
Zeros.
adding zeros just to make it make
Right.
sense. Like,
Yeah, I
is a
know. I always
quadrillion.
tell people you can't insert too much logic. You just have to go for the big picture.
Quadrillions. Did you ever look at the Dianetic
Of
lifetime
course.
page? Because you were a
Yeah, of
class
course.
5 auditor too, right? You were
Yes. Class 4. I was class 4, but
class 4. Okay.
whatever. I've studied 10 when I testified as an expert witness in the Danny Masterson trial, I calculated how many hours of Scientology I'd studied, and it was far in excess of 10,000. So therefore, you know,
10,000 hours. You're a master at it. Isn't that it takes 10,000 hours to be a master at
yeah,
something?
so it takes equal amount of time to
Ooh,
recover from all that, especially for me, I was born into it. So,
that's unbelievable. And your
yeah,
work that you've done, your advocacy and exposing is so needed. It's so good because of
thank
course
you.
when I came out, I saw all your interviews and the writings, and if it wasn't for you guys, like I might have not stayed out because there was this time where I'm out, but it's very recent and I'm still vulnerable and I'm still part of me. The programming is like, well, wait, those are your friends. It was good. Man, you've invested so much. And don't you
Right.
want this to be real? So there's this real two minds to it where you're flip flopping. And the only thing I can imagine is it's like Stockholm syndrome too, where people miss their kidnapper, they miss their abuser. You almost, because you're like, well, wait, it doesn't make sense that you were a victim of a cult. So
Right.
I was consuming all your content, your interviews, and many other ex-Scientologists, and I just kept going, they can't all be wrong about this.
Right. No, absolutely. I've heard a psychologist also compare it to the sunk cost trap. You've poured so
Mm.
much of your life and money and emotions and friendships and relationships
Yeah.
into an organization, and it really does take on an individual level waking up and really facing the facts, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, it does. It's a process, isn't it?
Yeah.
How long
Yeah.
did it take you once you left, when you guys escaped dramatically and literally escaped from the base? How long did it take you to just heal through it? Like where you were like, okay, I was in a cult.
Yes. I mean, I've always told people because I was born into it. My mother joined the Sea organization at St. Hill in the UK
Oh,
when
wow.
I was 4 years old. So it was never a choice for me ever, not even remotely. So I've always um, expressed it as the moment it became a choice when I escaped. I decided that's it. But still, I had an extensive road to recovery because even just peeling back the language, which I'm sure we'll
Mm,
get into, the language, again, from my perspective, when you learn that from as even before I learned English, the English language, I was learning the language of Scientology.
yeah.
And so all the words that and the language and the semantics actually create it so that you're doing the work for them by the time it's all said and done. Like even just think about the word blown, like this channel blown for good. It means that if you depart, you're a bad person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're blown. Yeah.
Right, which means that you've committed crimes and you
You
have
did a
things you
blow.
don't want known and
Yeah.
therefore you have work to do, get
I
back
always
and fix
thought,
it.
wait, is if a blow is always is the technical term was an unauthorized leaving, right? Of a
Yes,
blow.
yes,
But
or
then what about a
departure, yes.
divorce or departure? What every divorce is a blow? And I remember going, this doesn't make sense. I mean, every person that's divorced, they've blown, and then at some point it has to be authorized. Every person that leaves a job, did you blow? Like it does when you dissect it and use Scientology against their own, it doesn't make sense. Like you said, you
Right,
have to put your own mind. Quadrillions of years, trillions of years, quadrillions of years, right? All those.
right.
It's like and we're laughing
Exactly.
because that for people who don't know, that's a drill where you have to find a timeline, a spot on your time track where something happened, and you drill it and you have to go up at the end and trillions of years, quadrillions of years, right? I mean, all of this craziness. I go, are you an
Even
ashtray?
down to the inflection of the question, you're right, because coming from England, people in England, at least where I grew up, don't go up at the end of a question.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's like,
Yeah,
how are
and you
you?
have to.
I can't even do it anymore. I've so converted to
You converted, so has the
American.
whistle been missed?
Right. Exactly.
Apples?
There's even a diagram in the Hubbard reference, the Hubbard writing about that, showing the go up at the end, you
Oh
know?
my gosh, and it's drilled. You are forced to do it. When I did the training 12 hours a day at St. Hill, I was at St. Hill for 2 years. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Every day the org was open, I was there. They closed one day of the week, when I was there. And I was in that bubble during COVID, and the drills upon drills upon drills where you have to have that inflection, and all of the sessions that you, as an auditor, as a trained counselor in Scientology, as a minister, right? High priestess of Scientology, you have to deliver this, and you have to get it perfect, and you have to rewatch your videos, and you get flunk, and you have to drill. I had so many breakdowns in those course rooms, in that course room down there, just trying to get it right.
Yes.
Just feeling like, what is wrong with me? And
Yes.
and probably the fact that I was literally living off Red Bulls.
Kept you going?
Exactly. There might have been a wrong thing about that, right? And they're just like, "Oh, are
Yeah.
you sessionable?" "Yeah, totally. Yeah, let's go." You don't have to be sessionable to be an auditor. The PC has to be sessionable. They don't care
Yeah.
about you.
Right. For sure. So going back to your first days in so you were brought in through Celebrity Center.
Yes.
Um, did your family raise any concerns? I'm curious.
Well, my dad knew I was a Scientologist at a certain point. I actually joined staff because I couldn't afford the services. And
Mm,
so I joined staff at Sherman Oaks Mission in a 2.5 year
okay.
contract. And they told me, you can do your purif and everything if you do enough hours. So I started doing that, and I was hiding the fact that I was a Scientologist or doing Scientology. It took me about a couple months to say, okay, well, I guess I am a Scientologist. I'm like, well, someone said, well, are you a Scientologist? I said, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, are you, I said, oh, okay, I guess I am one.
Mm,
Because it switched over from I'm just exploring this to like, oh, I guess I am a member of the group. And they encouraged and pushed me towards that. And that's when I joined staff. And my dad received the letters and all the stuff in the mail because I was living with my dad at the time. And he's like, I finally said, I said, Dad, I'm a Scientologist. I'm doing Scientology. And I was scared that he was going to throw me out or be angry and upset. And instead, he was actually very kind. And he said, I knew that. I saw the mailings. And then
hmm.
he made a joke, joking and degrading. He's like, Tom Cruise, tell him I said hi, go clear. My dad was funny. My dad was really funny. But
So
I
he wasn't opposed, but he
he was
knew.
yeah, I think my dad felt guilty of all the things that had happened to us in our childhood, and
Yeah.
with what he was dealing with, and my sister had moved back in the house and she was dealing with her stuff, and we had this fallout, and my dad trusted me, and he was my best friend. My best friend. That's why I have Daddy's Girl tattooed on me with the tiger. We love
Oh,
tigers. And he was always there for me, and I know he prayed for me to get out, but part of him must have felt like she'll get out when it's meant to be. And he did the right thing, because had he said you have to leave Scientology, that's not good. He actually said he knew Scientologists in the 70s. He said,
oh,
"Oh,
okay.
they did a lot of good works." He said. So he knew them
Mm,
from the PR campaigns in the 70s. I know my dad, looking at it now, didn't approve of it, but he didn't want to shun me. Because
right.
had he done that and said, "Oh, no, no child of mine is a Scientologist, that's satanic," it just would have pushed me deeper in.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
now I'm like, "Oh, well, he's being an SP about it." And I was completely already manipulated at that point. I mean, it only took a couple weeks for me to so go deep into it. And by the third month, because I was a sponge. I was looking for something to fill me up and heal me at the time.
Yeah.
And I was also they just had so many things going on, so many events and open mic nights, and I was able to sing. They were like, "Come sing, and here's another fashion show." And so I was able to feel like it's a community center. That's the special thing about the Celebrity Center. They trap artists with such a deceptive aesthetic appeal, and then also, and this is a place for you to be creative, sit in the
Right.
office for a while and just, soak up the atmosphere. And there's beautiful manicured lawns in the middle of a dirty crackhead area in Hollywood.
Right.
There's this gorgeous French castle with fountains and marble interiors and a little cafe, and you can sip your $25 green juice and feel like one of the elites of Hollywood. And
Yeah.
just be like, "Wow, I'm special." And that's what I did.
Yeah, and you're right. The glossy facade is very much how they tend to lure people into thinking, "Hey," I mean, that's their whole strategy, right?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And
And
so,
so yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I stayed on staff for a while, and then I got recruited into the Sea Org.
Wow, I didn't know that
I
part.
know. I was only on the EPF though. So,
Okay.
for people who don't know, I say Sea Org for 1 month, but technically I wasn't fully in the Sea Org. I wasn't posted. I did the EPF for 1 month.
But that means you'd signed a billion-year contract. How did they approach that with you? And again, I'm curious because I escaped in 2005, so you got in
Wow.
after I was already
Girl,
speaking out,
isn't that crazy? I wish I
right?
would have been able to see. Yeah, that's
And I was living in Burbank at the time, no less.
no way. That's crazy. Because I
Yeah,
got in 2011.
yeah, okay, so 2011, mid 2011, we moved to Colorado, but my 2 older boys were both born in Burbank, so,
Wow, that isn't
yeah,
that crazy? And my
yeah.
husband now was born in Burbank, and I grew up in Burbank after when we moved to LA, we lived in Burbank. My dad's house was in Burbank. So we were neighbors
Yes,
basically.
right?
Oh, look at that. You could have passed by and seen each other and not known.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly, I could have been like, "Hey, Joy, don't think about it.
yeah, like, run
Don't go
away.
there." Yeah, that's funny. And also, small world, my stepfather was the ED of the Beverly Hills Mission. So he was like
Oh
the
my
CEO of the Beverly Hills Mission, but also worked extensively with the Sherman Oaks Mission.
Oh my god. Who is your stepdad?
His name is Hugh Witt.
Hugh Witt. I did not
Yeah.
know him. I did not meet
Yeah.
him.
He's still in, goes
Oh,
without saying. I mean, I guess it doesn't go without saying, but my entire family is still
they're still in
in.
Oh,
Yeah.
Claire, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You know what? It's everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't escaped. So I
Yeah.
made my choices and that's, you do what you have to do to be at peace with yourself. Uh Bit of a side story, but my husband does audiovisual for museums.
Oh, wow.
And back in 2010, he did a Ray Charles museum in LA. And as part of one of the exhibits, there was a video from BB King, and he talked about how Ray would always say that at the end of the day, when you lay your head down on the pillow, the person you have to be at peace with is yourself. And that really, I mean, that was 15 years ago. It stuck with me so hardcore.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's true. That's really
Yeah.
true.
So going back to, so you're getting in. So,
Mhm.
okay, billion-year contract. How did they approach you on that? And what was your thoughts, feelings? What was that like?
Claire, I wish my story was like, and I know this is probably something that every, victim of Scientology or any cult says, but I wish I was like, I was kicking and screaming. I was fighting them every step of the way. I was challenging them. I would say, that's a red flag. I was not. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a chance I can be with all my friends because I loved the Sea Org. I felt like they understood me. They
Mm,
would talk to me and they would be smiling and friendly. And there was very young people like me who seemed like executives, seemed like bosses, and the men and the women.
yeah.
And I admired them and I thought, whoa. And when they said, they basically they said, we want you to work here, is what they told me at Celebrity Center. They said, Joy, we want you to work here. I was like, you guys want me to work here in this beautiful place? And yeah, it wasn't that hard for me to go, well, what does that mean? How do I work there? And they put me in a room, they put the contract out, And you know how they do. They close the door and they hard sell you on that idea. And they are
Mhm.
so good. Recruiters are so good at finding your ruin, your
Right.
weak points, and exposing them. And I wanted family. I had a button on the third dynamic. I wanted the group. I wanted I wanted my people. Who are my people? I had lost my mom. I only had my dad left and extended family that were far out of the state, and it wasn't really real to me at the time to travel or go. It was just like, I don't really, I didn't have a lot of money. And, I had my adopted older brother. I used to sleep on his couch a lot. And so I kind of was like in this situation where I thought, well, I don't really have much of a life anyways. What a
Mm.
great thing to save the planet and to do great things. And they told me you can be a Christian. And so, and they, oh my gosh, they fast tracked that so quick when I signed it. And they were like, just sign it. We'll make it work out. And then I said, I have to ask my dad. And they're like, no, you're an adult. You're over 18. You're fine. You're fine. And it was within 24 hours, I was in PAC base and I was in the EPF. And I was
Right.
there with the bunk beds, 6 girls, and your 3 T-shirts that you or your shirt, your undershirts and your shirts, the whole uniforms. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I thought I really felt at the time that I was a part of something magical and momentous.
Yeah, and so for anyone listening, EPF, of course, is Estates Project Force, which is really, I would describe it as a very grueling program to immediately train you on your perspective as a a member of the Sea organization, and to where you get to prove that you're fit to be in the Sea organization. So, Joy, what went wrong?
I know, how come I well, it became really bad really fast. It
Yeah,
it was grueling. It was actually torture, and it was physical labor, hours and hours every day. And then you have a few hours of course room. And the faster you completed your course time, the faster you could get through the APF. Now, I've
right.
always been very book smart and, learning to clear my words. I mean, I was a brand new Scientologist. And in Scientology, you have all of these protocols on how to operate, how to read, how to do things. I think at that point, I'd only done 2 life improvement courses. Did those
Wow.
come
So
out?
you were really, really
Oh,
brand
I was
new.
raw.
Wow.
Maybe I had done my Purif, but it was like the first time Purif and the so Scientology went through GAT 2, right? Golden Age of Technology 2. And they had this whole thing where everything before kind of didn't count and you have to redo it. So
Right.
and they said, well, because we were fast tracking people too much, you got to redo it. And of course you don't get credit. You got to pay it again. And now it's take more and do more. So this was before that.
Despite the fact, by the way, that Hubbard says you can never do a major action over again, right?
I forgot that. He said that?
He did.
So dumb. Claire.
If you've reached the end phenomena, you can't redo it. Oh, but unless,
Oh, you're right. That must have been David Miscavige's money grab. Let's just
yeah, it
make everybody
was.
redo their bridge, and it's SPs. They're
Yeah.
everywhere. They invaded it.
Yeah, the redo of the purification rundown had started at the base even before I escaped.
Really?
Executives there, like Amy Scobie and others, were being made to redo the purification rundown because allegedly, even though, like in Amy's case, she was brought in as a young child, she hadn't done it enough and she hadn't reached the M phenomena. Anyway, we could.
Oh, it's
There's so
insane.
many rabbit holes we could go down, right?
There is, exactly. It's insanity, and when you look
Yeah,
at it, it's such a complex insanity, and it's a bewitchment, and
yeah.
the roots of Scientology are witchcraft. L.
Hmm.
Ron Hubbard studied witchcraft. He used all of that. He repackaged it. He studied hypnotism. He repackaged it. So all of this stuff that they tell you Scientology, when you're in Scientology, it's not to make the able more able, to make you more free, to make you more aware. No, we're making you program. We're making you less aware.
Yeah.
And in the EPF, it was so confusing to me because I that's when it really started for me to feel like I'm not good enough. Somehow
Mm.
I can't hack this. And I would have breakdowns. I'd be the happiest and I'd be singing because you're broken up into groups and you have your group C, C unit, And I used to always joke with my unit because you get completions, you have to wash 1,000 dishes, right? And you're there with I'm there with like 6 other people that are 18. There was underage people, there was old people, like whoever ragtag people that they recruited that month or whatever, people would come in. One guy, he got this huge eye infection
Mm.
and he had to leave. Like people would drop like flies and they would go off because it's so rough. And they
Right.
really do want the strongest to survive. As you know, they want like people who are so dedicated, and they told us we're going to be the first ideal Sea Org because we're pushing ideal orgs. And this is the ideal Sea Org. It's 2011.
Mm.
And I have some psych history. So I had been in a psychiatric ward for 3 weeks
Mm.
and they knew about it. And that was something that came up. And they said, okay, well, we can't get this fully approved. You need to be on some sort of program before you're able to come back. And I talked to Scientologists when I was in Scientology, like, and they're like, oh, you never saw a fit board or this. And there was apparently other things you do, but they just said, okay, for whatever reason, they said, we can't fix it right now. And you have to be out. You can't join the Sea Org. And that
Mm.
broke my heart because as bad as it was in there, as mentally torturous and taxing, I thought I was going to get through boot camp to get the fun part. I'm part of my
Right.
group and it's amazing. And you get food for you made for you and you get all your accommodations. Like they make it almost like they sold it as like this spiritual, you work hard, but it's almost like it felt like a spiritual vacation in a way because you don't have they pushed it on me like you're not going to have troubles. You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay this. You don't have to worry about SPs outside. You don't have to worry about troubles. So you're going to be in this nirvana with people who think like you and you're going to work hard, but you're going to love it because you're working for Commodore. And they really sold it, which obviously people hearing who've never been in are like, that's a cult, Joy.
Right, for sure. And did they include as well that you would be going up the bridge and get
Yes.
on the upper
Oh,
level
yes.
free and all
For
that part of
free.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything's provided for you. You get to have spiritual freedom and because I asked a lot of questions and then I was like, "Oh, I can't leave." And they're like, "Well, if you did, it'd be like saying a huge F you to all your friends and
Mm.
you wouldn't want to do that." And they knew that would get I was like, "Oh, I want to be a good girl. I want to be part of
Mhm.
this cool club." And at this time, so I was a month in and I left and I was crying and I was so sad and I had my guitar with me. I play guitar and I just felt like a total reject. And they said, "Well, we're going to give you another program so you can come back in." And then I went to back on staff. I
I
went
get
back
it.
on staff and I was just like, "All right, I'll go back on staff. I'm technically not ex here." I had no bill for those courses. Thank
Yeah.
God I didn't have it. And it was just kind of like I was forgotten about. And then I said, "You know what? I'm going to be such a successful actress and artist. I'm going to make everybody in Scientology proud and I'm going to make myself proud and I'm going to make an impact on this life. I'm going to be just such a good artist." And they also are like, "Oh, you don't have to be in the Sea Org. You can still support us and financially. You can donate. They gave me this song and dance. And then I ended up meeting somebody who was a very rich and successful Scientologist.
Mm.
I was a year in at this point, and I met him in Celebrity Center, and I kind of started falling off from Scientology a little bit. I was doing it, but then I started going, okay, well, I'm not in the Sea Org. I'm going to do auditions, and I'm going to, get out there and hustle. And then they kept pulling me back, and they were like, "We want you to meet this guy." Well, I had met
Mm.
him online, but I met him. I'd met him at Celebrity Center, and then he had became a follower on my Facebook, and then we had talked because he's a photographer, and I was modeling, and so he's like, "Oh, I want to give you a photo shoot," and then he met me back in Los Angeles, and the staff members were like, "This is a good one. You should
Mm.
get with this guy." And so they kind of pushed me, and I trusted them, and I ended up being married to this man. We got married
Mm.
and we were together for 7 years.
Wow.
And he was 21 years older than me.
Oh
He
my
was
gosh.
already in Scientology for 27 years from Denmark and was a patron $50,000 in with the IAS, right?
I see.
International
So he
Association.
was deep in.
He was deep in, and I'm sure he wanted a beautiful young wife.
Yeah.
And so they do that kind of pairing in there.
Yeah.
And of course I wanted, who wouldn't want a rich, handsome husband? Okay. And I was sort of, and I know at that point, because of where I was going, and I look at it and I said, God, everything I thought I could get with him and Scientology, I would have figured out probably almost definitely had I not married a Scientologist, I would have left within that first year because
Mm.
90% of people who find Scientology leave within the first year. I
Yeah.
found out.
And for sure. No, absolutely. And had cracks for you, I'm curious if cracks had started forming, and if so, what were those and what did it look like? And at some point, was that did your Christianity come into conflict?
Yes. Well, when I was in the EPF, I would pray before my meals, and they
Mm.
asked me, "Who are you praying to?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm praying to God." And they were just like, "Okay." And I started to see it was different in the EPF. Like it's like we own you. You're going to do what
Mhm.
we say.
Right.
That was a red flag for me. That was like, oh, this is doesn't feel like what they promised.
Yeah.
And then when I was out and I was on staff, and then it became where I said, "Well, maybe it's pack base. There's something wrong with that base. They don't understand
Mhm.
me as an artist because
Yeah.
Celebrity Center's got my back. They know with all my wild colors and my random friends I'd bring in and, and like sit at the juice bar, and I felt like this was a safe place for me.
Yeah.
And I was sober at the time, and I didn't even eat meat. I was vegan. I was very disciplined. And so I liked how disciplined and how they would crack the whip, and they'd be like, they got me to do a course on Christmas Day. Like they would be like, do a course, and I was like, okay, okay, I need someone to whip me into shape. Like I thought this was help. I thought this was counseling.
Mhm.
And even though it was very stressful, again, I thought it was that person. That person was stressful. That person's out of line,
Yeah.
right? It's that person who keeps writing reports about me. That it's them. It's not the whole organization. So I was very like sheltered from seeing it. I saw things that were wrong, but I thought it can't, L. Ron Hubbard is a humanitarian, and this is COB wants the best for us, and this is they're changing the. And of course, you go to the events, and you're constantly getting the propaganda. And everyone's smiling and looking at you, and you're reading these things, and it's just 3 days on course became 4 days on course became eventually I was on course every single day I could be. And I would
Mhm.
but it again, I was starting to fall back and go, okay, well, maybe I need to just do a day or two on course and get back because the Sea Org thing didn't work out. That threw me for a loop. And I do know that the people who saw that, they must have seen it because I'm
Yeah.
not as slick as I think I am. You think you're thinking inside, but they see you. I am very expressive, and of course, I would say things. I'm very honest. I wear my heart on my sleeve, so I know they're like, okay, if we don't get this girl paired in with a rich Scientologist or doing something, we're going to lose her.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, that's
So,
that's my idea because it
yeah.
felt very like, okay, 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 well, let's try this. And then getting with him, Mike's husband, we traveled around the world. So I went to
Mm.
orgs around the world. And then together we became IAS major donators. And they would reg him through me. And then I started making money. I was modeling for his workshops, his photography workshops. And I was doing all kinds of things. I started doing music more. I started exploring things because it was like, okay. And he was like, do a couple courses and sit back, smoke a cigarette, have a cup of coffee, donate, leave me alone. Like a
Mm.
club Scientologist. He used it as a club to meet people and be elite. And they
Yeah.
kissed his butt. And I liked that. I was like, "Ooh, he's got status." Suddenly I didn't have to be on staff. I didn't have to work for my status. I could just donate money.
Mhm.
But it became more increasing pressure that if you're gonna do that path, you gotta donate a lot of money. So
Yeah.
now they were like, "Hey, we know you just came back from your tour. We're trying to save children from psychiatrics and blah 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 blah, and then get kids off of drugs." And so the 50,000 he initially put in, they told me this, and I was like, "Okay, well then," I was like, "Honey, let's donate more money. This is saving the world." And they would put us in rooms, and it would be hours long reg sessions, and they would bring in all the people from the Sea Org would come in and be like, hey, I mean, it would just be hours and hours, and then we would relent, and it would be another 50,000. And before I knew it, we were $1 million into the
Wow.
IS. Gold meritorious with the medals. I still have that necklace. I always say
You
that's my
do? I was
$1,000,000
gonna
necklace.
ask.
You still have it? I still have my class 5 pin. I threw away all my books, all my PTS literature. I kind of wish I didn't because I could go on YouTube and point it out. I kind of, but in my healing journey, I was like, I want this stuff out of my house, but I didn't. The necklace, I'm like, this is real gold. I'll melt this down or something one day.
The only thing that snuck out and when they gave us our belongings, because we escaped obviously, was
Yeah.
a pair of gold OT earrings with the little diamond in them.
Oh my
I know, I'm like, cringe. Oh my gosh.
Did you melt them down? Do you still have
No,
them?
I still have them. I'm like, hell, I'm not touching those with a 10-foot pole. They're cursed.
Oh my, I know it feels like it, right? That's how I felt with all my books. I had the PDCs, the Philadelphia doctorate courses. When I read all the satanic, spiritual, woo-woo, new age stuff in there, I was like, oh, I want to throw up.
Mm.
When I'm discovering where all this stuff comes from and his
Oh
own
yeah,
son, right? Or
for
grandson was
sure.
exposing. I'm like, that's where he put, and everyone talks about the PDCs, the Philadelphia doctorate. I never did those. Thank
Yeah.
God.
And
But
those,
that's
of
where
course,
the magic is.
those were from like the 50s, I think,
Yeah,
right?
1952 or 1953. Yeah.
Yeah, of L. Ron Hubbard giving lectures in the very early days of Scientology. That's
Yep.
just for context for anyone who's wondering
Yeah.
what
And
that
you're
is. But
and
yeah.
you are pushed, coerced, and absolutely bombarded via text message, in person, emails. They come to your house. You've got to do your next step on the bridge. So you buy
Right.
those things and you keep them quiet a little bit. Now you got to start that thing. You keep them quiet. It's always a constant. You're not doing enough. So I bought all the lectures. I bought 10 times over. We need to put all the books in the library. 10 grand. There you go. You need the red edition special e-meter, $15,000. All right, you got money on account at Flag. Use it for this. We need constantly open up credit cards. I mean, the money was flowing. There was this golden time where I'm traveling with my ex-husband and I'm at Flag and I'm like, this is it's even bougier than Celebrity Center. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, and I'm a small town girl with big bougie dreams, right? Champagne taste on a beer budget. I was not raised around this stuff, but I grew up with the fantasy of film and television and wanting to create that. And the first year when I met my ex-husband, because we're divorced now,
Hmm.
of course, but my dad died. And that drove me, Claire, in such a depression because he really was my spiritual guardian, my covering. And it drove me, there was where I was on the precipice, and that was the first year in Scientology. And now it's like, well, I don't have a dad. This man is now my guardian, my husband. It was right
Mm,
before we got married. We were engaged. And then no, it was right before I met him. It was right before I met him, my dad died.
mm,
And that put me in such a depression. I was depressed and grieving when I met my ex-husband.
mm. I'm
And
so sorry for the loss of your
thank
dad. He
you.
sounds like he was an amazing person,
He
and
was. He would
I'm
have
sure
loved
he's
you.
happy to see you now.
He exactly, exactly, and
Yeah,
I'll see him again in heaven,
of
it's
course.
but yeah, it was an intense time, a tumultuous time, and then so I just threw myself into my new life, and we had all these beautiful photos, and I was in Italian Vogue, and we are getting all these accolades from Scientology, and I was bringing people into Scientology. I brought over 100 people into Scientology
Wow.
that I know, probably more, but that I got awarded for that, right? And
Mhm.
they'd give me accolades. And I mean, I was the golden girl of Scientology. I was doing services and I was still donating money. And then I was traveling and they put posters of me, get trained, because I did solo one. And then they were like, we want to get you on your training lineup. And then I did all of these things. I went clear, and then I did the next steps for OT preps. And then, oh yeah, there's something called superpower. You know about superpower now?
Of course I do. You
Oh,
know, funny side story, Joy. When I joined the Sea Organization in 1991, I was recruited to be a superpower auditor.
oh my gosh, you could have been my auditor.
It never happened then, but yes, I'm very well aware of
So
superpower and the causer surgeon's rundown, which used to be called the running program, which was actually to handle people who were constantly in trouble.
are you serious? So you know
Yes.
more about it. You read all the confidential stuff. This is amazing. I have questions for you about this. So I did both of
Yes.
those. And so I went in 2013. Now it's 2013 and it's
Mhm.
the brand new golden age of tech too. And
And so at this point, you're still just 2 years into your career as a Scientologist,
yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
But this time I'm like, I'm a superstar. I'm 2 years in, but I am full blast because I'm like,
Mhm.
this is my chance. I may not be a Sea Org member, but I can do it like the Sea Org. And I was
Mm.
so religious about it because I was trying to prove myself. And I had so many wounds. I wanted that attention. I needed that love and that affirmation and that you did a good job, that pat on the shoulder. And it is
Mm.
my love language, words of affirmation, acknowledgement, right? But I was desperate for it at that time. And they would,
Mm.
"Oh, Troy, you're so amazing. Wow, yes. Yes, if you did this, you would help us so much. Oh, thank you." And all the love bombing, all the things. And I thought, "Oh, man." And I know there's good people stuck in Scientology.
For sure.
You weren't evil when you were doing what you were doing. I wasn't
Right.
evil when I was doing. And people who think, "Oh, all Scientologists are evil," they're victimized by evil cults. The
Yeah.
upper echelon is evil. They
Yeah,
abuse
in fact, most
people.
people get lured in at the outset, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, because they want to help people.
Yes, absolutely. That was
Yeah.
the biggest thing. That's why I
Right.
trained. I was like, "I can help people." This becomes a ministry. It becomes a motivational factor. And so when we did Superpower, so that was the big thing. I did Superpower, and right after I did Superpower, I walked the Grammys red carpet. And I'd done that a few times before, but this time I was in a Trump dress at the
Mm.
Grammys, right?
I
And
remember hearing about this.
right, it was worldwide phenomenon. And suddenly I was a superstar, like
Mm.
in a way I'd never had before. I remember being on the plane and I would look and I saw everybody had their phones out and it had pictures of me in it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like in the
Mhm.
dress, it was top news. And it became something where, of course, then I worked on that news and promoted more. And then I got invited to the White House. I became on the Trump advisory campaign. And, you know, it, all of this stuff, I'm not as politically charged as I was active because at the end, it's not about politics. It doesn't
Right.
heal anybody. And there's so much black and white and he said, she said, and hate on both sides. I got very over it. And
Yeah.
at now I'm like, if it's not ministry related, if it's not actually helping people, I don't really want to be a part of it, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so was Scientology encouraging you and trying to capitalize on this, or what was the reaction there when
It was
when all
so
this was going
weird.
on?
Yeah, it was so weird, Claire, because it was both that because I was now a celebrity and I was on the news and I was doing interviews, they were like, see, that's superpower. And I
Mm.
can't explain it to this day because there are wins that I had in Scientology. But I also know looking at it that I would have had those regardless because I was always a hard worker. I was always very vocal, was always like, let's do the next thing. And I was very studied and I am a singer, songwriter. I had music out, acting. I was always going after my goals. I was built like that, you know?
Yeah. I
Which
always frame
Scientology
that
kind of
as
did.
don't underestimate the power of belief, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it's not the Sea Org that crafted you into that hard worker. You were a hard worker. You were
Right.
smart. Or you would have been smart if you had been in Google, if you had been anywhere, right? Where you are
Yeah.
now. It's like we are these types of people. And there is something in Scientology where they know how to take advantage and exploit the people that, like you said, want to help and who are bright. They have like a brightness. You can always tell the people that are like, oh, they're going someplace.
Yeah.
They grab and they say they want to make the able more able, but they really wanna take the able and make you a part of their system is what they
Right.
want.
Capitalize on the able.
Exactly, and take full credit. So they took full
Yeah.
credit for it. They're like, "That's superpower, this cause resurgence, you better thank COB in your speech." I remember I wrote a speech and I didn't thank COB in it, and I said, "Do I have to thank COB and L. Ron Hubbard?" And they said, "Yeah." So all of those
Mm.
speeches and of course, they change the speeches and make you do it. So I was the golden child, and now they love that I was famous. They loved it, but the pushback from, negative writings and negative pushback on politics, the controversial aspect, they did not like because
Mhm.
suddenly Scientology started coming up in the conversations because I was
Right.
overt that I was a Scientologist. I'd already done a meet a Scientologist. I'm a Scientologist video. I published it because they took it down now, of course. I'd already had, they didn't have Scientology TV at that time, but now that video showed all over Scientology TV now. Not anymore, I'm sure. But, I was
You'd be surprised, actually. We should take
really?
a look. Well, we should take a look and see.
Well, they took it off their YouTube channel.
Oh, well, we've helped people through the Aftermath Foundation's work, and even 6 months later, I mean, of course, it goes without saying that the people we help are kept anonymous for their own safety. If they decide to speak out like you, then great, wonderful. But
Yeah.
that's never going to be a part of the conversation
Yeah.
of if someone needs help getting out. But so Scientology may or may not have known that we helped get this person out. Nonetheless, 6 months later, their videos were still up.
They're slow with that.
For sure.
And I thought, I'm like, where are all the websites on me? What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm glad they're not fair
Yeah.
gaming to the extreme. I do see some comments and there's some stuff that they're doing, but it's not extreme, thank God.
Yes.
But I think also, I don't know, maybe they have to change their tactics at some point because it's been talked about. It's
Though, as you know, Scientology, in my experience, is incapable of change. I mean,
it's
our
true.
last instance of fair game was this past Thursday. We got an email from investigative journalist at Freedom Magazine trying to harass us.
Gosh, are you serious?
Yep.
What
So,
did they
but
try to say?
oh, like working on some article about some business that we ran in 2014 where it had to do with product reviews. A friend of ours was selling on Amazon. I mean, it's literally pathetic and
Oh
stupid.
my
It's just
god.
an attempt to
Listen,
harass
Claire,
and
we
attack.
saw in 2009, you did a negative Yelp review of that sushi restaurant. We need to cover it because that's what an
Exactly.
SP would do.
You're
2
a bigot.
stars?
You're
Yeah, you bigot.
anti-sushi.
Like, who uses the word bigot but
I know.
Scientology? Like, it's like
I know exactly.
1950s.
Dead giveaway. Anyone who says that in the
Oh,
comments.
dead giveaway. When I see all my Twitter, "You're a bigot. This isn't cool." I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, and they're
But in
using
all,
AI. They have AI bots, and they have
yeah.
AI. I found one that was harassing me. I just blocked them. That's an AI girl. That's like, and I know because I'm in the space. I have a business where I use AI tools, and I'm always searching what could I use. This is where they can make an AI version of you, and it moves weird though. It's really good if you don't know, but if you know that they. And then I said, and I was walking, like the movements don't match.
Yeah.
They have an AI girl. She looks like just some random blonde normal person. And she's like, yeah, so I saw that this is absolutely wrong. And that Joy Vila is not, and said so she was never really a Scientologist or whatever their thing was. And I was just like, this is so fake. This
Right.
is so lame. But they'll do
Yeah.
whatever they have to try to.
Yeah. And I always say, again, from having grown up in Scientology, all their many labels were terrifying to me. But then I realized, the only power they have over me is the power I grant them.
Ooh,
And
preach
so
it.
what's that?
I said, preach it.
Yes. Right?
Hallelujah.
Yes, there you go. I know. You're having your voice and your freedom. Nothing. That's what it is to, seize what's in front of you and be the good, as they say, as in the words of Gandhi.
It's right. So when's your TED Talk coming out? I want to see a TED Talk
Ah!
from you, Claire. You got full of wisdoms and encouragement.
I did do a TED Talk.
You did?
I did. Well, no, sorry, I take it back. I auditioned for one. I did, um, but this was right before COVID hit. I was going to do it in Denver, and then of course everything got shut down, and
Yeah.
life got in the way, and I got busy. But no, the one that I drafted and auditioned for was specifically on what it's like to be born into a cult. Because one of the questions from my experience that I struggle with is people are like, hey, you seem like a smart, normal person. Like, why did it take you so long to get out? Well, I mean, birth to 30 was my Scientology story.
Wow. 30, like that, like
Hmm.
that's your whole, it's not your whole life because now you have your life. But
Yeah,
for somebody else, it's like like that's your most formative years of your life.
completely. completely. And that's always, and also to the point of my auditioned TED Talk, I should
Uh-huh.
say, is
Unreleased TED Talk.
yes, there you go. I always, as now being a mom of 3 boys, I firmly am dedicated to the belief that it should be illegal to involve children in cults. End
Yes.
of story. End
Yes.
of story. Formative years, what children need is unconditional love and support and education. And
Yes.
Scientology is frankly opposed to all of those things.
They are. They
Yeah,
are. And the fact that you could be born into something without your choice and be manipulated and coerced and abused, it's child trafficking. You were
right.
trafficked to work for the cult for free for
Yeah,
$50 a week and for
yep,
30 years.
yeah,
Whether you were in it, you were groomed as a baby, as a kid, because you were never given a choice, and kids can't consent. Kids
that's
can't
right.
consent.
Nope. Nope, exactly right. So, okay, so back to your story though.
Yeah.
So at
Ooh,
what point in the later years did you start to realize this was not for you? How did you contemplate, like what did that process look like in terms of even having doubts and not being able to express those? Walk
yeah.
me through that part.
Yeah, 'cause it became a weird trap where I felt like I had this metal cage around my neck. And it was like this, and I couldn't, like almost those horse blinders. I couldn't look too right, I couldn't look too left.
Mhm.
And every time I studied something and I did auditing, indoctrination, and I did the false purpose rundown, which is, sec checking whole track, which is
And
security check. Thank you,
interrogation for
interrogation.
evil purposes and intentions that are holding you back, right?
From this life and your past lives, exactly.
Yes.
And it's so dehumanizing. And you're coming up with, I don't know, I pocketed the change, I should have done this, I forgot to put the plants out. You're just trying to find anything that can read on that, because it was hours and hours and hours. Now that didn't stop. It started because of my traumatic background. I know that they went through all of those scenarios through a very fine-tooth comb,
Mhm.
but they would say, "Okay, we didn't the CS wants more information." And they would keep bringing up the same stuff, and they're like, "We have to hit it at all the different ways." And it started being so hard to function and be
Mm,
a good Scientologist. It was like they wouldn't let me just live. And every time I reached a sort of speaking engagement or fame, they were like, "We have to send a handler out to you. You do another Grammys, we have to send somebody there." So I was not allowed to really be alone. Now I experienced the Scientology celebrity treatment,
mhm,
where it was really where I was constantly locked under surveillance of what I was doing. And that was like they would constantly call me, text me. When we stayed in Los Angeles, we lived in the Celebrity Center for 6 years. We lived there. Like half the time of the year, I'd be in that Celebrity Center in the hotel.
oh,
And so I'd
wow.
come down,
You're literally living there.
literally living there. I mean, beautiful,
Yeah,
gorgeous. In Kirstie Alley's room that she designed, the blue wallpaper you can see in Leah Remini's one of her videos.
yeah,
That when she was in, she does that interview in a room with blue, like what was it called, eau de toile? So that kind of, it's like a Renaissance scene in blue on white
yep.
paper. It's very Renaissance looking, and the bed has posts and sheets, and I mean it's my ideal standard of looking. Like I'm in a castle. I love this. I'm in a French castle, French provençal. That was where I lived for 6 years,
Mm,
and it was beautiful, but it was a prison.
right.
Because as soon as I would get to the elevator, I'm in the org, and you had to pay, you had to do the course. It's an elevator ride right down to the next step. And
Yeah.
it became really hard to have two minds, to be a Christian and a Scientologist. I would give interviews and I'd say, "I'm a Christian Scientologist." And I wanted to save point Christianity. I wanted them to get it, because I also wanted them to alleviate my pressure, the feeling that I had that I was in something dark and wrong. I'm like, I just want
Interesting.
other people to get it, so that because that's really what it is them. They're not getting it.
Yeah,
I knew there was something off, but I
yeah.
couldn't put my finger on what it was.
So that makes sense. And during the years that you were starting to feel that things were off, did you have fear that if you did try to break away, Scientology would use information you'd given them against you? Was that a fear that you had or no?
I think it was because I was married to a Scientologist. It was never like I'm going to break away from Scientology.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like I just have to work this out.
Hmm.
It wasn't until 2020, so 2019, I got divorced. There was
Okay.
infidelity and there was issues going on his side, and I was just like, this isn't going to work. And I felt very neglected because I wasn't allowed to cry in front of my husband.
Mm.
So he would just leave the room. So I learned how to hide my emotions, and they would
As a
tell me,
good Scientologist does, right?
put your TRs in. It was
No,
so
no case
hard.
on post.
No case on post,
Hmm.
exactly. And everybody was on that side. Just don't show it off. And my ex-husband would tell me, just go in session. Just talk about it in session. I don't want to hear it. Talk about it in session. You're hungry. Go get your body words in.
Hmm.
Very much. And so I realized, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm very vocal. I'm very outspoken. And in the politics arena, they wanted me to run for Congress. So I was looking at running for Congress, and that's
Wait,
when
Scientology wanted you to run for
no,
Congress? Oh,
people in the White House
okay.
and the voters, and
Yeah.
I'm getting thousands of messages from people. I'm doing my lives. I'm doing a speaking tour. I wrote a book. I'm out, so all this stuff is happening. I'm doing movies. I'm doing my more music. I hit #1 on Billboard, iTunes, Amazon. I'm doing tours. I'm an independent sensation. I'm doing my living, my art, and I'm in a lot of these conservative circles. And they're like, Joy, you need to run for Congress. We need your
Mm.
voice, because I'm very outspoken. I'm on Twitter and blah blah blah. And that was when I said, okay, I'll start a congressional run. And it'll be like maybe in Florida, because we were looking at moving to Florida. I'm at Flag all the time. Why not be at Florida? And that is when Scientology pulled me into a room I'll never forget, in the president's office at Celebrity Center. And they told me, you cannot run for Congress.
Hmm.
Scientology is not political. And that is when I did push back, because I was like, how dare you tell me what I can and cannot do? And they're like, read these references, word clear these references. So I spent days word clearing all these references, and nothing in there that L. Ron Hubbard says is a Scientologist can't be political. And I said
Hmm.
that to him. I said, this also Scientologist, not Scientology. And that's when they said, we still don't want you running for Congress.
Hmm.
And they actually told me about the Guardian's office and what they had done. Kind of. They said we had some people, some SPs that got in, right? Totally not how it's presented the truth, but they said we had something and we don't want that to be drug up because it'll create black PR and bad press for Scientology.
Hmm.
And so just like that, my career aspirations in politics, maybe for the best, but maybe not. I'm not a quitter. So that bothered me. I gave it up. And 2019 rolled around and I just said, this isn't working with my marriage. So I got divorced. They didn't want me to get divorced. They flat out told me, you cannot get divorced. And I said, show me the reference. By then I started being like, show me the reference. Now I'm 7 years, 8 years in Scientology. I'm like, show me the reference. Like,
Yeah.
I got a little more training. I've got more of my status here. I'm like, who are you talking to? I'm Joy Vila. And I had this bit of pride and the status on who I am. And I was also like, how come nobody's defending me online? I'm fighting all these Twitter trolls, all these Tony Ortegas out there writing articles about me. And of course, now they're all my friends, right?
Of course.
But at the time, I was like, I'm getting attacked, and they don't care. OSA's like, better you than us, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And they didn't like that the articles would come out about me. I'd get pulled in another sec check because they're like, well, what have you done? Why is this leaking? Why is this going? I'm like,
Blaming you for someone even talking about you.
literally. And
Yeah.
I started getting really upset, and I thought, man, what is going on? I really didn't like OSA. I really didn't.
Mhm.
Obviously, I really don't like them because
Of
they were
course.
always trying to stop me. They said every time you do an interview, you have to submit that press to us first, because like we do with Tom, right? And they all call him TC, right, in there. And like
Yep.
we do with TC, we're gonna make sure that you don't. They said, like, for my good, so that the person isn't like anti-Scientologist and starts asking about OT levels or something, right? And they're
Right.
like, and tries to scare you and whatever, make you sick. And so I was like, oh, okay, it sounds good. I didn't do it 'Cause I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like a red carpet event is tomorrow. I don't have the 24-hour, like 2-week process that to submit because I tried it. They never get back to me. I'm like,
Hmm.
no, these people are not working for me. I was like, OSA's got a problem. I couldn't say that though, because in the snitch culture of Scientology, obviously a knowledge report would be written about me. And there
Of
was always
course.
knowledge reports written about me from whatever I wore to the things, because I would joke and I would, oh, she's joking to great. And I always have a sense of humor about things. And I did say to one time, I'm sure there was reports about me after I did Cause Resurgence. I said, maybe we are a cult. I was
I
like,
mean, yeah, in all fairness, look at the definition of a cult in a dictionary. It's pretty dead
exactly.
on.
It's dead on. Cause Resurgence is the weirdest crap that you ever have seen. And you pay, is it 5,000 or 2,500? It's cheap, so people do it a lot. I
I
did that
think I've heard now it's 5,000 and
now
you run around a pole. It's
in a
L. Ron
black
Hubbard's
room.
Genius from space.
Oh my
It's
gosh. It's
based on the
OT. It's OT objectives. Objective processing is to look outside yourself and
yeah.
receive this amazing wins. And the way they sell this ball of crap is like it's the best thing ever. I mean, they're such used car salesmen in Scientology. I did that. That is something that was truly disappointing. When I did that, that was in 2013. I was like, "Oh, nah, this ain't for me." And people are like, "I
And
love it. I was only for 30 days." I said,
and
"You're
how many
literally
hours a
running around a
day?
pole."
How many hours a day did you run around
5.
the 5? Okay. Yeah, there you go. People at the base, there were people that would do it 5 hours, but there were also people when they were doing it full time that would do 12 hours a day.
They didn't allow us to do it 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Steps, you're
Anyway,
just getting your steps in. There's nothing
right.
spiritual about that.
No.
It is so bizarre. It's a black room and you just walk around a pole and you have to keep your eye on the pole the whole time.
Right.
It
Yeah, I read the advices, like the original writings about it, and it was Hubbard's explanation was that it's from whole trek, like I said, where you would go and find a rock in the middle of space and just circle around it, and it's on the premise of confusion and the stable datum, which again is a Scientology belief that if you've got mass chaos and confusion, you pick one thing and fix and hold all your attention on that, and the confusion will disperse.
yeah, sounds a little bit like what's that called? When you have something in front of you and you stare at it.
Hypnosis.
Sounds like hypnosis.
Completely.
Doesn't it? That's the definition of a hypnosis. Just stare at this one thing and don't look at anything else and focus on it. All your focus on this thing. That's hypnosis.
Yeah, same as TR0, the communication drills.
Oh,
Just fix on that person. Don't look away, don't blink, don't do anything, don't fidget, don't show
yeah.
any
No showing
emotion.
emotion. And to have kids doing this stuff, it's
Oh, I know.
completely
Yeah,
horrendous abuse.
completely. And so, since we're getting to the end here of our
Yeah.
allotted time for today, and I want to be respectful of your time
I can
too.
talk a little bit more if you want
Oh,
to.
okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So
'Cause I talk a lot, Claire. I'm sorry. I
oh
hope I'm
no,
giving you the good.
it's all good. I've been looking
Okay.
forward to this, and I really appreciate you sharing your story. And we have obviously a lot of common shared experiences, even though you were in Scientology after me. But so what did your exit process look like, let's say, and
Yeah.
how did you get through that? What was that like for you?
Yeah, my exit process started when in 2020 there was this thing. I don't know if you remember this, something called COVID-19. Did you hear about that?
Of course.
I don't
Who
know if you.
doesn't?
I don't even know what it was about, but something.
Yeah.
So that was when the pressure was applied to all Scientologists. You better freaking do your bridge because the government is about to take it away from you. I kid
Mm,
you not. That was every time David Miscavige got on there because he was doing all the graduations at Flag before that. And we're like, oh, COB is doing the Flag graduations. And so he would give you all this. And then it was COVID. It was immediate lockdown. I was
mhm,
actually traveling during the time. And then I was in Los Angeles and I went into the Los Angeles bubble to stay at CC, Celebrity Center. And then forgot why, but I was crying. It was so disturbing the type of auditing I was receiving. It was very dehumanizing. That was
mm,
when things started changing. They were like, yeah, it I don't know what was going on, but there was a staff member named Rebecca there. She was my ethics officer at the time. The ethics officer has all the power to write you up and report you. If you're not, you don't get auditing. Auditing's supposed to be a pleasure thing that you get to receive, right? It's not a right, even though, because you get to finally talk, even though the auditing can be quite abusive and harmful. You feel like you're getting somewhere because you're like, I'm talking out my traumas, I'm getting some hope, and then you get the high. We're all drug addicts in Scientology. You're chasing that high, you're chasing that relief because the pressure is so hard that any sort of normalcy feels like pleasure. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh my gosh, I need this. I was post divorce. It was like everything was, and then COVID, everything was heaping down on me. And they're like, if you don't get right, you're mid your OT preps. That's what's wrong with you. Cause I was mid my OT preps and I was already on my training journey. I was a class 3 auditor at that time, or I was a class 2 auditor. And so they're like, you need to go. And then a friend talked me into going to South Africa. So I went to South Africa. I studied there. That was actually the best time I ever had in Scientology because they're very more free there. And I studied at the class 5 org, not the AO bubble.
Mm.
And I met people there, friends there that I still have today who've left Scientology. Praise God.
Awesome.
3rd generation. I'm not going to say who it is, but I do have a friend from my time out there who is a 3rd generation Scientologist who left Scientology, like you, was in since they were a child
Wow.
and was in the Sea Org since they were 12. So it is unbelievable what this person went through. And we became
I'm sure.
best, really good friends. And they came out later, like I came out later. So I'm in, and I'm addicted to traveling because I love it. I love to travel. I love new experiences. So I thought, well, if I'm having Scientology overseas, I have all these friends. It's amazing. And then it didn't quite work out in South Africa. And then St. Hill was like, we want you to train here. This is where you'll go to. You need to go to at this AO. I mean, I was just like reaching for anything because I kept
Yeah.
getting these weird like ethics things. Like you have to finish this. You have to do, now you have to do keeping Scientology working course. And I'd go, wait, what? No, I need to do that. And it was always, it became such a fight. That was when I knew something was up. And I know Scientology was freaking out during COVID because they lost probably half the people in Scientology walked away because the way
Right.
they handled it was so bad. Claire, they made us watch tons of videos, wear masks, gloves to go in session. We had to get COVID tests constantly. We had to live in a bubble where you can't go into the town for months and months and months. They had to ship people in. We were living like Sea Org members as
Mm.
paying clients of Scientology. And we were
At St.
forced.
Hill in England.
Yes. I mean, we were on the
Wow.
outs we were at St. Hill, but we were living on the outskirts. You can't live in St. Hill unless, like
Right.
Sea Org members, how it is. They're
Yeah.
shipped out somewhere else. But this was when I was on lines at St. Hill, and it was such torture. This was the worst experience I had because the people there were so beautiful. I loved the St. Hillers and the elderly people that work there. They had a lot of elderly people, but it was so broken because that was
Mm.
when they pushed me to do 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I noticed abuse of time on other individuals. People were breaking down. It was lonely, was isolated. I started getting depressed. I finished my class 5. I got into my class 4 internship. It was never enough. Now I trained there with Tom Cruise's daughter, Bella Cruz. She was
Mm.
also class 5 and she was on her class 5 internship. And we were in there in that basement training 12 hours a day. And you're just like, you just want it to end. You just want to get through it so you can go OT. But
Yep.
yet you're also looking forward to taking someone in session because it's your relief. You can help someone, you can listen to their problems. But it
Right.
was like everything I did, it wasn't good enough. And that for me, it finally broke me when there was so much attack on I was depressed. I was going broke. I was racking up credit card debt because I wasn't working during this time. You can't sing and speak I lost $30,000 worth of potential gigs. They all canceled, boom, 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 during COVID because there was no
Right.
venues to sing or perform. And I was living off the little bit of some money coming from my music sales and a few other projects. And I would do, I had a few things, but I became so hyper fixated and depressed because they said, if you just go full blast on the bridge, it'll solve all your problems. So that's what I did. It became torturous.
Mm.
I was sitting in my room, and it could only be places you could stay at. You could rent rooms or you could stay in the hotel that was only sanctioned by Scientology. It had
Hmm.
to be the Scientologists, and they would rack up the prices on these rooms. I tell you that much, like unfair prices. And it was like, oh, OTs running these places that were approved by, it's such a racket. And they're like crappy accommodations compared to what you're paying. And they
Right.
knew all of these foreign people would be coming from poor countries. I'm at least had some money in my pocket, even though it was going fast because of intensive after intensive and then training and training. But there was people coming from really poor countries that this was the nearest org to them. And then once they're there, they have to leave their family, stay in the bubble. You can't leave. If you leave, you have to come back and do a 2-week quarantine at your own expense.
Mm.
It was, you couldn't go into town. None of the Sea Org members at the base were allowed to go into town for 2 years. In fact, maybe longer. I think
Wow.
now they've just now been able to go out. So they haven't left the base.
Yeah.
They
Side comment, by the way, my uncle is still works at St. Hill as a Sea Org member.
Who's your uncle?
Frank O'Sullivan.
Oh my gosh, I know Frank. Are you serious?
Hmm.
He's
Yeah.
what's his post?
I don't know. I mean,
You
the
can talk
last time
to
I
him.
saw him was 2011 at my grandmother's funeral in England. And of
Sweet.
course, even then, he wouldn't talk to me or look in the eye because I'd already been declared a suppressive person in
Oh,
January 2005. But yeah, no, and the crazy thing is that Frank had escaped. He blew in the early 2000s. He was on the rehabilitation project force for 10 years.
oh my God.
And he escaped, and my mom tracked him down and snitched on him, and Osa brought him back.
That's the culture Scientology creates.
Correct.
Snitch on them, and because you're told that's for their own good.
Right.
And that it's a
Exactly.
dangerous world out there. Like people like me and you are now in this dangerous swamp world where they're all drugs and crazy and like every
Yeah.
big the psychs, big pharma is, tearing at
And
our
it's
faces. And this
for
dangerous world,
sure.
they tell you the outside world doesn't get it. And so I believed all that hype. Even though I traveled the world and saw outside people, kept myself in a bubble.
Right. And it's
No,
interesting that they converted COVID just to forward that narrative and
they
make it
did.
even more controlling.
They did, and
Yeah.
that was when I could see the control aspects. They pushed way too tight. It was
Yeah.
so, I mean, it was so tight, and I'm like, "What happened to I'm a celebrity and I'm an artist," and, like, they didn't care.
Yeah.
You have to show up, and I acted as if I was a Sea Org member, but I'm paying. I'm not a Sea Org member, but they ran us on Sea Org schedule that you have to be here from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. because you
Mhm.
have to finish this, and because they also use the excuse of you're on a limited time with with the not green card, but what's the immigration, right?
Mhm.
We get 6 months at a time. We have to leave, come back, do another 2-week quarantine. So they're using all this pressure. They amp the pressure. The pressure has always been intense in Scientology, but this broke me. This absolutely broke me. And I was depressed. I was lonely. I didn't talk to anybody else but Scientologists.
Mhm.
I felt like nobody would love me or know me or care about me if they knew how badly I was doing. So I pretended like I was okay. I only
Mhm.
told a few Sea Org members how I was feeling, and they laughed it off. They said, "Oh, you love people. You're fine, Joy. Not you. You're good. They just get out of your head, exterior eyes. Just go look at some stuff, and I'll give you a location. Oh, you're fine." Like everything was brushed off, and this death feeling, this wanting to die, it got worse and worse and worse. I was
Mm.
strung out on caffeine. Like I was skinny, and I was just like, I was like, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it because I thought at the end it's gonna be worth it. I'm gonna
Mhm.
sacrifice everything: my health, my time, my energy, my money, my family, whatever. I didn't date. I didn't go out. I just did Scientology because they promised me that once I got on my OT levels, it'd all be worth it. And I saw other
Mm.
people sacrifice on their OT levels. And and if I don't do it now, it's going to be taken away from us. And they would
Mhm.
scare us every week with a new fear unlocked. Until at that moment, I reached out to a staff member and I confessed everything. I'm depressed. I feel horrible. I was also scared to say I couldn't say like I heard voices telling me to die. I did at that time. It was so
Mm.
oppressive and demonic.
Wow.
because I'm like, am I having a psychotic break? Am I like my mom? I was so scared. I'm like,
Mm.
am I the crazy one? I always thought it was me. But if I say I have anxiety, I have depression, I feel lost, I'm not allowed to say that. That's
Right.
I'm a rock slammer. I'm the problem. There's
Yeah.
something wrong with me. And rock slam is a term in Scientology, like that you have this weird read on an e-meter that shows that you're basically a criminal, right?
Right.
I was afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to rock slam. I don't want to be seen as an SP. I don't want to. That was when I was afraid. And I can't
Mm.
say anything because if they write me up, I'm already in so much ethics trouble. I was in ethics trouble for no reason. By the way, in 2020, before I left to the UK, I had tweeted, does anyone know a good Christian church in Nashville? I have a speaking gig. I'm out there. I'm on a book tour. I got called in for an ethics cycle that says, why did you tweet that? It looks like you're trying to leave Scientology.
Wow.
And that scared the crap out of me. I like my blood ran cold because in a way I was reaching for Christianity. I was reaching for God. I was reaching for the religion of my old time, right? My
Yeah.
comfort for
And
people that
which allegedly, if they do accept people of all religions, what's the problem with that?
exactly. And
But
I
they
told
don't.
people that. I parroted those same things. You can be a Christian and Scientologist, but when it came down to it, you cannot be. You can't be. It's impossible. They make it impossible for it's everything they do and they tell you and they can't tell you outright, but they do in their actions.
Yeah.
And there was people who confessed to me and tried to warn me who were Christians who said, "Listen, Joy, I know you're a Scientologist. I'm a Scientologist too, but they're going to come down on you on Christianity." And I didn't hear it. I was like, "No, no, there's no way." Until they did. And so
Hmm.
they said, "You can't tweet like that. You represent Scientology. You're a Scientologist celebrity. Keep it shut." I
Hmm.
said, "I thought I can be a Christian." Of course you can be, but you have to remember this is social media. It can be interpreted by bad people in the wrong way, right? They put all of this other guilt trip around it. So I guess they're right. But you
And
can go to a
and
church.
frankly, I'm surprised that they even said you can be, because at least in the years that I was there, that would have been considered other practices, which is, of course, severely frowned upon.
I think they had to open their ranks probably because they're losing people
Mm,
like
yeah.
flies. And you have values that, treat other people with kindness that can align. They must have made some sort of PR decision at some point from the time when I joined that we're going to align with Christian churches. Because when I
Mm,
came in, I said, "Well, do you guys do any work with Christian churches?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we work with the South African church here." And like they told me this when I was in Celebrity Center when I was 22. They told me we do church, we do interfaith, and they did. And
mm.
I was
Yep.
involved with a lot of that stuff in DC. So they must have made it a plan to filter in because how are you gonna grow? You gotta have Christians in now, and you gotta say, "Oh, you can be Catholic, you can be Christian." There's no way. How can you hear about Xenu and past lives even? None of that is in the Bible. None of
Right.
that. You don't even worship God. There's, "Oh, you can eighth dynamic." It's you don't as a Scientologist, you don't even have a concept of an eighth dynamic. They just put that on there for the tour, right? You're
Right.
you're not actually encouraged, "Okay, now we're all gonna go and have time to meditate on our first dynamic, our eighth dynamic." There's no
No.
time that you get to connect with a loving creator. There is nothing like that. There is no
No.
religion practice. There is do, buy, do more, buy more, snap, pop, let's go, let's go. It's like a military, it's like North Korea. It's like
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with religion or
Yeah,
connection.
you make a good point. I'd never considered the eighth dynamic, the God dynamic, the
Yeah.
and I'd never considered it just a token gesture from Hubbard to just throw in a splash of, you know, I but
Religion for the
but you're right.
IAS.
Nobody does anything on the eighth dynamic.
No, we don't have any eighth dynamic processes. I was like, "Is that
Yeah.
OT8? Is that when we get to find out the eighth dynamic? Like, when are we gonna do this eighth dynamic?" And I came in going, "Oh, I already know the eighth dynamic. That's my God, my creator." But
Yeah.
it's no Scientologists are encouraged to have a faith or practice faith or any reflection or experience of eighth dynamic. On the public, they want that. You can be a Muslim, you can be a this. When? Where?
Yeah.
How? When
Yeah.
I tried to be, they stopped me. They
Yeah.
tried to stop me, and I used to get upset, and they'd say, "Well, are you praying while you're auditing?" And I would say, "Listen, I'm gonna pray. I'm a Christian, and that's that. I don't
Hmm.
pray in session." And I started really it got so bad, I started just being like, "I don't wanna hear this. This is not okay. I'm paying here. I want this." And I started demanding more help, change my auditor, all this stuff. And it led down to where nothing fixed anything. I'm sick. I mentally, emotionally,
Mm.
I feel I fell off my bike. I was riding a bike and I fell and I still went in session. I was bloody black and blue. And they're like,
Ugh.
yeah, go in session. You can't be late. Like it was so abusive. I also abused myself in that system because I thought I just have to prove to them I can do it. I just have to complete this next action and then I can rest. Then I can have a break. And you know more than anyone, this kind of mentality they push on you.
Yeah.
And in my darkest time, when I talked to one person, I trusted her and I said, serial member, and I said, I'm feeling this way. What can I do? What references do you have? What did L. Ron Hubbard say about this? Like, I need some help, please. I'm being vulnerable. And she just said, well, just go watch a funny movie.
Mm. Wow. Haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, because she had given me references and she could see. And I said, listen, I'm at the end of my rope. I just
Yeah.
got, what can I do? And they're like, well, she said, watch a funny movie. Don't think about it and come back and take your PC in session tomorrow.
Hmm.
I know it must have broken her heart because I know that, she's a person of goodwill. There are good people in there that are of goodwill that are just stuck in that system. And she wanted to help me. I mean, I talked to her for hours, like free counseling sessions, like just like, I'd vent because that was the only person I could talk to. But at the end, she had no tools. She had no help.
Right.
Thousands, $2 million in 15 years. I was like, what am I doing? And I prayed. I said, Jesus, help me. Finally, I called out to Jesus. I said, help me. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did, Joy.
Thank you. He brought
Yeah.
me out. And that was 2 years ago. I was in St. Hill crying out. He brought me out of it. And I ended up moving to a place where there's very little Scientology. And the Lord said, leave Scientology. I heard the voice of God tell me that. I started going into counseling, deliverance ministry, Bible, back into a Christian faith, finally confronting, wait a second, let me Google Scientology. And I was
Hmm.
sweating. It was very painful to look it up. And when I did, I found out everything. And God told me, write a book about it, which I wrote my book, From Scientology to Christ, The Escape They Never Wanted Me to Make. It's available for pre-order on Amazon.
I ordered
And
it.
thank you so much.
Yes, of course. And I will, of course, link to your social media, your YouTube channel, and
Thank
the
you.
pre-order page of your book in the video description. And I would love to, once your book comes out and I've read it, I'd love to have you back on to deep dive into the book if you'd
Oh,
be
that would be
interested.
awesome. Because I talk about this whole journey and I talk about the witchcraft aspect, which needs to be seen that L. Ron Hubbard was a Luciferian. He talks about he's Lucifer, he's going to prevent the second coming of Jesus, and the
Mhm.
devil's actually the good guy, and Jesus was an implant, and then he's an alien. I'm like, if Christians knew, then of
Yeah.
course you can't be a Christian and a Scientologist. And if non-Christians knew that, no, that's
Yeah.
it's just it
I
infuriates
will
me.
tell you though that I know on good authority that high up people in the Vatican are definitely aware. And in fact, I know that there's a copy of a number of former Scientologist memoirs in the Vatican Library,
Are you serious?
including Mark's book, Blown for Good, Jenna Miscavige's book.
In the
Um,
Vatican Library.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, and I think you're right. It's absolutely important that people be educated on the deceptive practices of Scientology, how they do abuse people's beliefs and they
Mhm.
lure people in under false pretenses. And that's really important to educate people about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's become part of my life's work, and I just said,
Yeah.
"God, if you wanna bring the things back to me that I lost during Scientology years, it's up to you, but now I take my medicine. I read the Bible, I pray, I worship. I also lower myself because I was my own god during Scientology years, I knew better, and the narcissistic feeding, the abuse that with the love bombing, that, "Oh, yeah, I can become my own god. I can become my own creator. I can create this." It's so fed into my pride and my wounds at the same time,
Mm.
and God has completely healed that. I don't have depression, I don't have anxiety, I don't have those problems anymore. I wake up each day and I'm like, yeah, I go through life, but the healing
Of
happens
course.
so quickly and so incredibly that life is so much better. Like, even the best day in Scientology, like, I'd take the worst day out any day.
Right.
Any day,
Completely.
right? Like,
Every
it
day
doesn't
is a great
care.
day.
Exactly. It's like
Freedom does that to you.
freedom.
Well, and I just in concluding, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and everything that you've been through and are going through. And I'm just very grateful that you've decided to lend your voice to
Honor.
exposing Scientology, and anything I can do to help, I'm here too. So I appreciate your time, Joy. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I will look forward to our next conversation.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, feel free to check out the merch store link in the description. We have Hail Xenu, Xenu is my homeboy, and BFG branded mouse pads, shirts, mugs, all sorts of other stuff in there that helps us to bring you new content on a regular basis. You can also pick up a copy of my book, Blown for Good, Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology, in hardback, Kindle, and Audible versions as well. There's also a link to our podcast, and you can get that on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to watch another video, you can click on this link right here, or you can click on this one here, or you can click on the subscribe button right here. Thanks a lot. Until next time.